Welcome to Mind Shield. We protect the mind and pursue the truth. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Human Receiver. This presentation is a field guide to a controversial idea with a very simple spine. The nervous system is electrical, and anything electrical has attack surfaces. Some claims in this space sound like science fiction. Some mechanisms, like RF heating, auditory artifacts from pulsed microwave exposure, and neural entrainment, have real literature behind them. And some conclusions people jump to go way beyond what's proven. So we're not doing hysteria. We're doing biophysics plus plausibility plus evidence discipline. Because if something is happening and leaves little physical trace, the only winning move is to be methodical. Define the system, define the vectors, define what can be measured, and document like your future self is going to court. Let's start with the target, the nervous system. The human body isn't just meat, it's meat piloted by voltage. Every thought, every motion, every emotion runs through networks of neurons firing with electrochemical signals. Synapses pass messages using neurotransmitters, but those messages are gated by ion channels, tiny biological switches that open and close based on voltage and chemistry. That matters because when you hear the phrase neurological interference, you're really asking, can an external stimulus push the system off balance? At the microscale, if you disrupt signal timing, channel behavior, or sensory processing, you don't need mind control. You just need confusion, fatigue, misfiring, and misinterpretation, and the organism does the rest. The core takeaway here. The nervous system is a sensing engine, and it can be stressed, chemically, acoustically, electrically, magnetically, and thermally. Now zoom in on the control room. Different brain regions do different jobs, and that creates different vulnerabilities. The auditory cortex interprets sound. If something can create a sound perception without sound in the air, you've basically hacked one of the most socially powerful human channels, language. The hippocampus is memory formation. Disrupt it and you can get brain fog, missing time, and scrambled recall. The hypothalamus regulates sleep, temperature, and circadian rhythms. Mess with that and you can produce fatigue, agitation, and strange body sensations that feel impossible. And the frontal cortex is judgment, planning, impulse control. The part of you that says, this is real, or this is noise, this matters, this doesn't. If those systems are destabilized, the person doesn't just feel pain. They can lose coherence, and coherence is the backbone of credibility. Let's talk about brainwave states, because this is where soft control enters the chat. Your brain runs in rhythms. Gamma for high integration, beta for alert focus and stress, alpha for relaxed wakefulness, theta for deep relaxation and hypnagogic drift, and delta for deep sleep. A key concept is entrainment, the tendency of biological rhythms to synchronize with a periodic stimulus. You see this in everything from circadian cues to music tempos to flickering light patterns. If the brain exhibits a frequency-following response under certain conditions, then the security question becomes, could an external stimulus push a target toward stress, fatigue, or dissociation by biasing their state? Even in normal life, you can move someone's state with sound, light, sleep deprivation, and stress cycles. The claim here is that advanced systems might do it more precisely and more deniably. Now we get to the physics of coupling. How energy gets from environment to body. 3 key pathways show up again and again. Penetration. Certain frequencies pass through materials and tissue differently. Absorption. Energy becomes heat or mechanical pressure at the tissue level. Resonance. Structures can act like cavities where standing wave patterns concentrate energy in specific ways. The important idea is not microwaves equals magic. It's that the human body has dielectric properties, and under specific conditions, energy can concentrate, demodulate, or convert from one form to another. In other words, the environment can carry signals, and biology can unintentionally act like a receiver, sometimes in ways that feel surreal from the inside. This is the slide that makes everyone sit up straight. The microwave auditory effect, often called the Frey effect, describes reports where pulsed microwave energy produces the perception of clicking, buzzing, or even more complex auditory sensations. The key mechanism described in this deck is thermoelastic. A rapid, tiny temperature rise creates a pressure wave, basically a micro shock wave, that the auditory system interprets as sound. The unsettling part isn't just the sound, it's the location of the perception. It's heard inside the head, not through the air. Now, critical investigator discipline. The existence of a phenomenon does not automatically prove widespread weaponization, but it does establish a plausible channel that can be tested, bounded, and studied. This is where you stop arguing online and start building measurements. This slide widens the lens, not just RF, also magnetic and extremely low-frequency interactions. Neurons and muscles, especially the heart, depend on tightly timed electrical signaling. If you disrupt ion flow and timing, you can create jitter in the system, palpitations, anxiety-like surges, cognitive disruption. This deck frames it as coupling and disruption, including references to calcium ion behavior at synapses, because calcium is a key gatekeeper in neurotransmission. Again, the point isn't to declare certainty. The point is to map what kinds of fields could plausibly interfere, and what signatures you'd expect if they did. Here we hit a tricky truth. Patents can show technical imagination and sometimes real engineering work. They do not prove operational deployment, but they do show that people have thought about these pathways seriously enough to formalize methods. This slide lists patents about remotely monitoring or influencing brain states, directional systems, and state induction approaches. Investigator mindset. Treat patents as breadcrumbs, not verdicts. They belong on the capability map, not the proof map. Proof comes from measurement, corroboration, repeatability, and independent verification. This slide references the symptom cluster popularly labeled Havana syndrome, or anomalous health incidents: dizziness, headaches, balance disruption, fatigue, thermal sensations, and concussion-like effects. Public discussion around these incidents has been contentious for years, with competing explanations and incomplete consensus. But the reason they matter here is straightforward. They represent a modern, high-stakes case where directed energy has been proposed as a candidate mechanism, and where symptoms are often described as localized and sudden. From a security standpoint, these cases highlight the nightmare scenario: a harm channel that's hard to attribute, leaving victims trapped between suffering and disbelief. Now we talk about the deepest layer: cognition. This deck frames a set of effects as cognitive disintegration, brain fog, attention collapse, memory dumping, forced lethargy, states where a person feels like their mind is being sanded down. Then it frames a darker layer: identity warfare, voices, intrusive thought-like content, emotional implantation, and the so-called schizophrenia mimic. Whatever you believe about mechanisms, the strategic principle is ancient. If you can make a target look unstable, you don't just hurt them. You destroy their social credibility, their relationships, their employment, their access to help. That's not just harm. That's containment by narrative. This slide connects the individual to the battlefield. Cognitive warfare is about shaping what people perceive, how they interpret events, and how they choose actions, often by exploiting fear, uncertainty, and information overload. The most important model here is the OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. If you can disrupt observation, distort orientation, or flood decision-making with false signals, you can paralyze a person or a population. And here's the brutal elegance. You don't always need to control minds. You only need to control signal to noise. This is the philosophical gut punch slide. To people living inside the experience, advanced sensing and beamforming can feel supernatural. Action at a distance, invisible influence, effects without an obvious source. Arthur C. Clarke's line fits because it's true. Sufficiently advanced tech looks like magic. But the investigator's job is to reverse the spell. Turn magic into mechanism. Turn mechanism into measurable variables. Turn variables into evidence. This slide speaks in the language of sanctum. That consciousness, your inner life, should be the last private territory. Whether you frame it as spiritual, ethical, or legal, the idea converges. There is such a thing as cognitive liberty, the right to control your own attention, perception, and inner experience. Philosophically, this is about autonomy. Psychologically, it's about integrity. Legally, it's about rights catching up to capability. If the mind is a domain, then the future battlefield isn't a place. It's you. Now the practical pivot. Defense begins with verification. This deck points toward detection, spectrum awareness, environmental baselining, controlled observation, and toward shielding concepts like conductive enclosures and grounding. A security warning spoken plainly. Don't improvise electrical solutions that create new hazards. Fire risk, shock risk, and false confidence are all real. Defensive measures should be cautious, documented, and ideally informed by professionals. The deeper point is this line. You cannot fight what you cannot see. Verification is the first step to defense. So your real shield starts as a notebook, a timeline, and clean data. We end in the gray zone, where capability, law, ethics, and lived experience collide. If even a fraction of these mechanisms can be misused, then the future needs more than disbelief and memes. It needs standards, oversight, and repeatable civilian accessible testing pathways. The goal isn't panic. The goal is clarity. And clarity is built the same way every serious investigation is built. Define claims precisely, separate what's known from what's suspected, and climb the evidence ladder rung by rung. Because in a world of invisible vectors, the most radical act is still the oldest one. Document reality.